Hi, welcome back to my studio. Today I'm going to show you how to turn an 18-inch quilt block into a completed pillow. Let's talk about the supplies that you're going to need to do that. I have already pieced my quilt block. I made the Sparkle and Shine block from my book, A Very Coriander Christmas. I'm using Beautiful Day Fabrics, as you can see here. And for the back of my pillow, this is also from Beautiful Day. You will need 3/4 yard of fabric cut into 2 rectangles that each measure 24 inches by 18 1/2 inches. You also need a 20-inch piece of just simple white fabric. This will be the back of your pillow top sandwich. And you need a 20-inch piece of batting. That will be for your pillow top sandwich as well. As far as binding, again, this is Beautiful Day fabric. I used 2 strips of binding. I cut my binding at 2 inches wide. Cut your binding at whatever width you prefer cutting. So I did 2 inches by the width of fabric, 2 strips that size. You might do 2 1/4 by width of fabric or 2 1/2 by width of fabric. Those are common binding measurements. Whatever you normally do is fine for that. And I went ahead and sewed that together into my continuous binding. In addition to the fabric supplies that you need for the pillow, there are some other supplies that you're going to want to have on hand. You will need a tool to mark your quilting lines for your pillow top. I'm going to be using a Hera marker. Another marker that I like to use is this water-soluble Dritz Mark-B-Gone marker. The thread I'm using is a 50 weight Aurifil in the color 2021. I use this all the time and I use it for piecing as well as quilting. So that's what I'll be using. And I like to use the 505 temporary fabric adhesive, and I use this for basting my pillow top. You might have a different method that you like using, but this is my favorite basting method for pillows. And then I just have a ruler that I will be using for marking my quilting lines. Those are the basic supplies that you're going to need. And we are going to start off first by marking our pillow top. Let me get some of these things moved out of the way here, and I will show you how I do that. And I'm going to use the Hera marker, as I mentioned. It might be a tool that many of you haven't used before or maybe aren't as familiar with, so that's why I wanted to show this for you. Now what it's going to do is just put a crease onto your pillow top rather than putting any sort of permanent mark, pencil, marker, chalk. It just puts a crease, and I'm hoping this shows up for you on camera. I've decided that I'm going to mark 1 inch just crosshatch lines, vertical and horizontal. And if you ever want to see kind of where your lines are going to fall, I centered up my black line here with the center of this block, and we'll do the same going the other direction here too, across. And then you can see, where those are gonna fall. Are they gonna fall somewhere crazy on a seam? Am I gonna wish that I had moved everything over 1/2 inch? So I did this actually before I started filming, so I had an idea of how I wanted to mark this out. And I thought everything was laying pretty nice when I did straight down the middle vertically and straight across the middle horizontally. I didn't care for it as well if I ran it diagonally, but you can play around with your quilt block depending on the block that you are using. You're going to want to mark this differently. But I'm going to go ahead and start with this. And this tool does not put any permanent lines onto my project. It just puts a crease right down like that. I think that shows up pretty nicely for you guys on camera. And I'll go ahead and do this horizontal line. Also, you can mark however you want. Maybe you prefer doing all vertical lines and then coming across. I'm just gonna go like that. And then I'm just gonna keep going out every inch on both sides, go out, and get the whole thing marked. And I do like to do this before I make my pillow top sandwich. I just find that it marks a little bit nicer doing it this way. Now, using this marker, it is a little bit harder to see when I am matching my ruler up. So that's one thing to think about. When I use the blue Mark-B-Gone, it shows up very easily. I don't have to think too hard about where my next line is. With a Hera marker, I do have to look a little bit closer, but I'm not gonna have any marking lines that I need to take off later either, which is nice. So I will continue marking through here, and I'll be right back with you once I've got this all marked up. I have completed marking those crosshatch lines on my pillow top. The next thing that we want to do is to make our pillow top sandwich. You're gonna make this the same way that you do with a quilt. So if you have a favorite basting method, just go ahead and use that method. For me, when I make pillow tops, I really like to use the 505 temporary spray adhesive. So that's what I'm gonna show you guys here when I do my pillow top sandwich. I have already laid out everything that I need to get spray basted. I have the pillow top. It is facing right sides down, and then the 20-inch square piece of batting, and then the 20-inch square piece of backing. Now this is not the backing of your complete pillow top, it's just the backing of your sandwich. And 20 inches square, wrong side facing up. And then you'll just get everything nice and smoothed out. When I spray baste, I like to do this in halves. So I'll flip both of these sides up. I will come over here. I am just doing a little quick show and tell of how I do this. I'm not actually gonna spray in here. If you're spraying somewhere that you don't want any residue on, it's not a good idea. So I would never spray on my cutting mat. I would take this somewhere else where a little overspray isn't going to hurt anything. But I do wanna show you, kind of how I would spray this. So just pretend I'm spraying and we're in a good spot. So we're spraying. This is probably about how fast I would go. I go pretty quickly and it doesn't take a lot of spray baste. And then I fold over this layer, smooth everything out, come over here, give this another spray. It's probably about how much I would spray there. Smooth this out, and then I repeat on the other side. I like doing this in halves. I find that everything just stays where I want it to. I would come over here, spray this side down, and then just the batting goes back, smooth that all out. If you find that you have any threads that you don't want, if you see them, now is the time to get rid of those. Spray baste, and then smooth all of this out. And then when I have everything nice and smooth from the front, I always flip it back over and then smooth it out from the back as well. And then once that's done, I am ready to go over to my sewing machine and machine quilt this. I am just going to be doing straight line machine quilting. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to put my walking foot on there or not. I oftentimes for a small project find I don't need my walking foot, but if you have machine quilted before on your sewing machine, you probably have certain preferences. Just use whatever's comfortable for you. I'm going to go get this done and then I will show you what it looks like after it has been machine quilted. Pillow top is quilted and we are ready to trim it down. This guy gave me a little bit of a run for my money. I went over to my sewing machine to start machine quilting it, and I started going. I just had an open toe sewing machine foot on, and I made my first line, I made my second line the whole way across, and I noticed it was sort of starting to give me little tucks, and I thought, well, that's no good. Let me just go ahead and put my walking foot on. Maybe that's all that it needs. So I put my walking foot on. Usually I don't have to use my walking foot for a little project, but I thought, well, that's just what it needs. And I started sewing again, a couple more lines, and it was still giving me little tucks in my pillow top. And I realized that when I showed you all how to spray baste, I wasn't actually doing it. And so when I went over to my sewing machine, I kind of took it for granted that it was already spray basted. So it was not basted when I started and everything was just sort of shifting around on me. So I had to unpick, I think I had maybe 6 lines. I had to unpick all of those and then spray baste it for real. And then everything went much better. So if you run into problems, it happens to all of us, and we just have to figure out what's causing the problem and fix it and move on. And here we are ready to move on. The first thing that we want to do after we have machine quilted everything is to trim off all of those little batting edges. So I'm gonna lay this here so you can see what I'm doing. Let me grab my rotary cutter. I like using a 60 millimeter for just about everything. So that's what you're gonna see me using. And we're just gonna trim these edges off. This ruler that I'm using is the Quilter Select ruler. It is 6 inches by 24 inches. And I love these rulers. They are grippier than any other ruler I've ever tried. And I find it to really help so I don't have any shifting as I'm cutting. I find them to be really nice. I've actually ended up purchasing quite a few different sizes and kind of switching out some of my other rulers just because I've been grabbing these all the time. So we are just trimming off these edges so we have a nice square perimeter to work with. And then we'll be ready to add our binding and our pillow backing. Okay. So here's where we're at now. Everything is all trimmed up and we want to go ahead and add our backing. So let me flip this over. One tip when you are doing crosshatch quilting, it's harder to see on the front side if you have missed any lines of quilting, but you can easily check on the back to see if you've missed anything. It was the first thing I did when I thought that I had the last rows done. Flip it over to the back and make sure I didn't miss any, so you can spot them much easier there. These are the rectangular pieces of fabric, 24 by 12.5. And what I've done is I have folded it along the long edge. So this is the 18.5 inch side here where the fold is at. Then we have raw edges all around here. And then just, I gave it a little press over at my iron. And then I'm gonna line up everything here. And the second piece, we're gonna run this across the top. So we'll have the two folds overlapping there in the center, and that's going to give us our envelope enclosure. If you ever see that phrase referenced, that's what it's talking about, this type of pillow closure. Now, often what happens when you machine quilt, you are going to end up with a pillow top slightly smaller than what you started with. So we started at 18.5. You can see we've got about 1/2 inch. So we've shrunk down just a little bit with that machine quilting. So usually what I'll do is I will line up top one side, the other side, and leave the overhang on one side. And then I have a little pile of wonder clips I stacked over here. And I'm just gonna wonder clip these around, and I'm gonna leave a little bit of a space here. I'm not gonna do this side, I'll leave space here so that I can flip this over and trim it. I'll just trim that extra backing fabric off once I have this pinned down. And then I will wonder clip that last bit. What we're doing is we're clipping everything in place here. Once we have everything cut to size and wonder clipped around the edges, you can also pin this. Then we'll take it over to the sewing machine and we're just gonna do a basting stitch to hold everything in place before we add the binding. I think I'll just leave it like that. You need enough room so your ruler can fit right here. So we'll flip it over. Oh, and you can see I don't have even as much as I thought I was gonna have needing to cut away. That's only about 1/4 inch. And then we will just line up with the edge of the top here, and I'm just trimming away that 1/4 inch right there. Just the part that hangs out beyond my pillow top. Flip it back over. Make sure I don't have any weird folds on that bottom one. And then go ahead and clip these last ones into place. One more up here. And then what I'll want to do, take this back over to the sewing machine, and I am going to set a long stitch length. I just go as long as I can on my machine. So I don't even know, probably, I bet they're 1/2 inch stitches or so. They're very long, and I will run just a basting stitch or a running stitch right along this edge, 1/8 of an inch in from the edge. So that stitch can stay there and the binding is just gonna cover that up because our binding will fall at 1/4 inch. So just close to the edge, just to hold all the layers together when we go to add our binding. I will go do that and be right back. Okay, we're back. First of all, my estimate of 1/2 inch on that stitch length, that was way too long. It's actually more like 1/8 of an inch. I have a Juki and I set it all the way up to the number 6 on my stitch length, and it's closer to 1/8 of an inch. So whatever the longest stitch is you have on your machine, that's what you're after. It's not going to be 1/2 inch, unless maybe it is. That's fine too. But we're just tacking everything in place all around these edges. You can kind of see how everything is coming together here. Our envelope enclosure is made, and all we need to do now is just add binding. And I add my binding to my pillow tops, my pillow projects, just the same way that I would add it to a quilt. I have my binding prepared here with 2-inch strips, and I am just going to go ahead. I like to do machine binding for the whole thing, so I'm going to machine bind everything, stitch it down by machine, flip it, and finish it by machine. Some of you probably like starting with machine and finishing by hand. That's fine. Whatever technique you like to use for binding, you're just going to use the same thing here. Just stitch around the whole perimeter of your pillow project, and your pillow is going to be done. We're going to be done. After all of these steps, we will have a completed pillow, and I am looking forward to seeing the finished project. I'm going to go do that and be right back. We did it! We have a completed pillow. Woohoo! I added that binding, and this is what the back looks like. The envelope enclosure, you just open it up. This is an 18-inch pillow form that I tucked down in there. And it's done. It's cute. It's ready to put on your couch or on your bed or somewhere where you need something cute to liven up your space. I hope that you guys found this video tutorial to be helpful. One of the things that I want to do in the future is to film some technique-based tutorials. So how to machine bind, how to machine quilt, how to make flying geese, so that I would have those to reference back when I do a video like this. Are there certain techniques that you guys wonder about, or that you are, constantly updating your techniques that you're curious about? If so, I'd love for you to comment below and let me know. I want this channel to be helpful to you guys, and that you find it a great resource for things that can help you grow in your quilty life. So it has been wonderful sharing my time with you here, and I hope you guys had a good time too. So I will chat with you guys later. Have a good one.